Alrighty, the next area we're going to hit is the stem on the plant. And your stems are also going to have three functions. The first one is going to be to support and manufacture the leaves. And of course, that's crucial for the plant because the leaves are where the primary place of photosynthesis is. It's going to produce all the food that's needed for the plant. The second function is that they're going to conduct water and nutrients to and from the leaves. We said in the previous video that the roots are the ones that are going to be absorbing all of the water and the nutrients, and so they've got to be able to get up to the leaves. The leaves can't perform photosynthesis without water. And then again, once the leaves have produced all of the food that they're producing, it's got to be able to get to the other parts of the plant as well, including the roots. And so everything is going to have to be conducted back and forth between the roots and the leaves. And so the stems are right in between and they can do all of that. The third function of a stem is also to perform photosynthesis. A lot of people don't realize this, but stems perform photosynthesis as well. And if you think about that, the stems on your plants are usually green as well. And so if they're green, then they can contain chlorophyll and they're going to be able to conduct photosynthesis also. All right, once again, just like we did for roots, we're going to be comparing monocot and dicot stems. Both of them are going to have an epidermis made up of that dermal tissue so that it's going to protect the stem. Both monocots and dicots are going to have a cortex for storage. But the vascular bundles are what really makes the difference between these two types. So in a monocot, your vascular bundle, which contains your xylem and your phloem, your vascular bundles are scattered all the way throughout the stem. In a dicot, the vascular bundles are in a ring, and so in the dicot, the cortex is just the area between the epidermis and all those vascular bundles. Whereas in the monocot, the cortex kind of goes all the way through the stem. Wherever there's not a vascular bundle, there's going to be cortex. So here it's much more throughout the stem, and here it's much more limited. The dicot is going to have a pith in the middle. Now, if you remember when we talked about the roots, the monocot root was the one that had the pith in the middle, but then when we get up to the stem, it's the dicot root that has a pith in the middle. And sometimes some of your dicot roots, this actually gets hollowed out and some of your stems can actually be hollow. What's really different about the monocots and dicots is the way the vascular bundles are structured. In a monocot, what I've done here is I've taken one of these vascular cambium or vascular bundles and I've brought it out and I've blown it up like this. Okay, so in the vascular cylinder in a monocot, the phloem is on one side and the xylem is kind of in the middle, and then there's a big airspace down here. And so if you look at that, it's commonly called a monkey face. It looks like a monkey face. Here's his eyes, here's his mouth, here's his forehead. And so the vascular chambers in a monocot look like a monkey face. In a dicot, they don't look like that. So once again, in this stem, I've taken out one of the vascular chambers and I've brought it out and I've blown it up. And in a dicot, the xylem is all on one side and the phloem is all on the other side, and there's vascular cambium in the middle. Now remember, the vascular cambium is the meristematic tissue that will produce either more xylem or more phloem depending on what is needed. Now, the other thing to remember about this is that this one is the way it would be turned on this side of the stem. And as I would go up on this side of the stem, this whole picture would be flipped upside down, because in a dicot, the phloem is always on the outside. And that's why girdling a tree or cutting around the outside of it can be, is actually fatal to a tree. Once you girdle a tree, they last for a while because all of the xylem is on the inside, and so we can continue to get water and everything up to the leaves. But eventually, when you girdle it, you've actually cut through all of the phloem, and so when that happens, the leaves cannot transport all of the food that they've produced down to the roots, and so the tree actually ends up starving to death because it can't get the food from the leaves all the way down to the roots. So again, this is this one is what it will look like on this side of the stem. On this side of the stem, you have to take this picture and flip it upside down. On this side, you have to take it and flip it sideways because the phloem is always going to be on the outside. So here, you'll notice that, again, no vascular cambium on the monocot because the growth is very, very limited, just like in the roots. They're not gonna grow a whole lot. These plants don't normally get very large, so there's not any vascular cambium. In the dicot, as I mentioned before, sometimes you've got herbaceous dicots and sometimes you have woody dicots. If you have a woody dicot, like a tree, then this woody stem is actually going to have 3 more layers as in addition to what we see up here. You're going to have an inner bark, which contains the phloem and some more cortex. And then you're going to have a cork cambium, and just like a vascular cambium produces more vascular tissue, a cork cambium is going to produce more cork, which is what your outer bark is made out of. And it also mentions in your book that this is why the bark on trees so often is cracked, because as the tree continues to grow, because it keeps producing more xylem and more phloem, as it continues to grow, the outer bark has to give way because everything is swelling, and so it cracks, and then it's replaced with new cork that the cork cambium makes. Okay, so differences again between monocot and dicot stems are that the vascular bundles are going to look very different. The vascular bundles in a monocot are scattered, and in a dicot they're in a ring. The vascular bundle for a monocot looks like a monkey face, whereas in a dicot it does not. Xylem's on one side, phloem's on the other. Okay, so those are the main differences there. You're going to have pith in the middle of your dicot stem as well. So those are the differences between monocot and dicot stems, which again, when we get to this lab here in a couple more days, you'll be able to see those under the microscope for yourself.